Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, as it is set to have a $300 million opening weekend, one of the largest opening weekends in the last several years, and especially the most successful Marvel film during the post-COVID era, beating out pretty much every single film that they released last year in just its opening weekend or alone, or at the very least getting very darn close to it, and by the end of its second weekend, absolutely beating every single other Marvel film that came out last year, which I think says a lot about, one, the films that came out last year, and two, the current state of the MCU. So we'll talk about that. Before we get any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. And I want to first off thanking every person who is a member of the Asgardian community. It really does mean a lot for the support that I've gotten over the last few days. Don't worry, I'm doing fine. Family's doing fine. It's just been some drama that I really can't go into, full-time job stuff, so I just can't really go into it. But I just wanted to say thank you again for understanding having to cancel the stream and for videos being delayed, etc. And especially also for my Patreon Subscribe Star Locals members. Hopefully the shoutouts video is okay. Please direct message me on either of those platforms if there is something that you want altered in any way, and I will try and address those as soon as I possibly can. Anyway, let's get into the news. And so as you can see from Deadline, yeah, Doctor Strange expected to have a massive opening weekend, and looking at my own local theaters, especially my own local IMAX theater, I can say I believe that this is exactly what this is the most likely scenario for this film to get to $300 million globally. We already know that the film is going to make somewhere between $150 and $200 million here domestically. And once again, because I can look at the theaters and I can look and see how those showings and show times are doing, it's something that I definitely believe. If in one of my local areas and my local market, which is not, you know, a large movie theater going populace, not to say that people don't go to see films, but it's one where typically, you know, Chattanooga is not really going to be one of the biggest areas for films and film releases in general. So the fact that it's selling out as much as it is, that tells me a couple things. One, that the film is doing well, but two, it's the normies, right? Because really my area is going to be filled with a lot more so normies, people that don't really know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, don't know anything about the Disney executives who've been caught on film talking about the directions that they want to push these movies and future Disney products, the fact that they want to push identity politics further into their films, the fact that they want to push sexual identity politics into their films as well. And I think that that is something that, if many of them knew about, might change their perspective on things a bit. But because they don't, because they likely don't care to get into that world, it makes sense as to why the film is selling early as well as it is. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into what they think the numbers are going to be. It says, happy times are here again for movie theaters this weekend, with Disney Marvel's long-awaited Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness set to fire up the summer box office season that we didn't have a year ago. Well, I'll stop you off there and say that we did have a summer box office last year. It's just that it wasn't very impressive, and only a few films were actually able to convince enough people to actually go out and see them and make their money back. You know, I think back to even earlier films in the year, like A Quiet Place Part 2. Guess what? That film was able to make its money back. That film was able to make profit. I think back, of course, also to ones that were later in the year, like Venom 2, which was able to make a lot of money, a lot of net gain, a lot of net profit. It's really the big Disney Marvel films and other major productions from Warner Brothers, etc., that didn't make any money. And a lot of it was because of the fact that their films cost way too much money to make, and they were not able to convince enough people to actually go out and see them. And while many people will point to the pandemic, etc., and there are some reasons to say, and some, I would say, excuses that could be accepted at certain times and in certain places, specifically ones where there might be a COVID mandate, things like that. When you remember when all that was going on, remember when that was the biggest story going on in the news, and now everyone's acted like, oh yeah, it never happened. You know, we never tried to force people to take anything. We never tried to force people. Yeah, it's crazy that people just often forget. But when we were still in the midst of COVID pandemic, when we were still in the midst of the Omicron variant, guess what? Spider-Man No Way Home broke records. Spider-Man No Way Home did exceptionally well and ended up making $1.9 billion. People forget that that was about a 1 week removed from what was seen as the surge and the peak of the Omicron variant. And yet that film was not affected. So I think that alone kind of points to why a lot of these news media types who are going to try and pretend like all their commentary from the last year didn't matter, like all the things that they said last year didn't matter. I think it definitely brings should bring some cause and pause whenever we hear them try to, make excuses. The movie, which fans are anticipating to be a three-pronged sequel to previous Marvel blockbuster Spider-Man No Way Home, which teed up events with Benedict Cumberbatch's character and Disney Plus series WandaVision and Loki. Yeah, that's not a good thing to do. Don't connect it with those series. They may have started off interesting, but then just like all Marvel shows that happen on Disney Plus, they all went downhill very, very quickly, is eyeing a $160 to $180 million domestic start in what is the widest release ever during the pandemic era at 4,400 screens, plus another $140 million overseas, which would yield at least $300 million in a worldwide start, which would wrap the second best box office debut of the COVID era after No Way Home's $582 million worldwide release. So, that is, again, a reminder. Remember, that was during the peak of the Omicron scariant. That was during the peak of the mainstream media continuing to push the death numbers, continuing to push all of the fear-mongering. That film was able to make $582 million worldwide. So even though the $300 million that Doctor Strange is expected to make is really good, even though it is on pace to make its money back and to make profit to boot, even though I think that this film has a very good chance of being a billion-dollar film, it still is falling far beneath a film like No Way Home. And one could say, well, it's because Spider-Man's a much more popular character than Doctor Strange, etc. And again, I think that there are some points that can be made there, but I think the much better point to be made is absolutely the fact that this film is really a sign of what the current state of the MCU is, which is that normies are going to go out to see it, but the audience has shrunk quite a bit. The massive audience that they had when Endgame came out, right? The record-breaking Endgame, that audience has gone away, or at least portions of that audience have gone away. So this film and all the films that are set to come out after this are really going to be a test to whether or not they're able to, one, recapture any of those audiences, or two, if they're going to lose any more of those audiences. Again, as a wide MCU, not talking about Doctor Strange specifically, because if you compare Doctor Strange 1 to Doctor Strange 2, I think that you'll find some discrepancies there. I think that Doctor Strange 2 has the potential to do a lot better since people know more about the character now, and because of that direct connection with No Way Home. But I do think it is still something worth noting nonetheless. It goes on to say, in addition, most of the Middle East isn't playing the Marvel sorcerer given the LGBTQ, you forgot the AIP plus 1,000 other letters that are supposed to be behind that, elements in the picture, which, again, admits to the fact they are pushing identity politics into their films. And again, we know that they are doing this on purpose, and we know that they are doing it not because of the goodness of their heart, but because they are trying to push agendas, because videos have actually leaked of them admitting this fact. It goes on. Doctor Strange 2 currently sits at a 79% fresh of 115 reviews from Rotten Tomatoes, which means nothing, because Rotten Tomatoes is garbage. It goes on. Another selling point for the core fan base, the sequel reps the return of Sam Raimi to the MCU. Yes, core fan base. Yes, the core fan base, many of which I would say have left. It's really the normies that are left behind. Sam Raimi is indeed, I think, a reason I think some people will go to see this film. Because they want to see, hey, is this going to be Sam Raimi 2002 or is this going to be Sam Raimi 2007? Is this going to be studio-run Sam Raimi, where he's given very little control, where a lot of decisions are made by the higher-ups? Or is this going to be Sam Raimi where he has full control or not? That, to me, is going to be the biggest factor in what happens week 1 and what happens week 2. Is how good the film actually is, or if the film is not so good. So it's currently Doctor Strange 2 for the US, Canada, pre-sale stand at $60 million, which is ahead of the Batman. Once again, pre-sales do not matter as much as they try and push. They have another article here saying Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness pre-sales are outpacing Captain Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Thor Ragnarok heading towards $150 million opening weekend. Again, pre-sales are just one of the factors. It is not the factor. But you'll notice that oftentimes what these media types will do is they'll focus on just this one factor and say, boom, this film's going to be a hit. Remember when they did this for Solo: A Star Wars Story? And that film was a massive, massive flop. And some people might say, why is it the only one that you bring up? Because it's the biggest example that people are going to actually have heard of. If you want, I could definitely look into the research and look into all the articles and find other examples. However, it is definitely the biggest one to date. The point is, the fact is, pre-sales are only a part of the picture, because if you look to the number that they just admitted, $60 million in pre-sales, but they're projecting the film to make $150 million plus, which means the vast majority of people who they are expecting to show up on the day to go see the film have not bought their tickets yet. On sale, on day, same day ticket sales are still the driving force for films. And it is one of the hardest things to predict. So what they do is they look at the pre-sales and say, okay, let's look at this, compare this to previous historical models, and then try and figure out whether or not this film will follow the same models as those other films or not. So if this film were to follow the same mindset, or rather the same trajectory of a Solo the Star Wars story, the numbers would not be as impressive because people did not show up on the day for that film in droves. Not to mention the drop-offs that film saw after the fact. So you have that factor. Or this could have similar results as some of the other films that they've mentioned. Saying, okay, they had massive ones. Interesting there, it talks about how at the same point in time before its opening back in March and behind No Way Home's 120 million. So again, it's half of what No Way Home's pre-sales were. So I think that is also another indicator, right? So No Way Home had almost $2 billion. This is another reason why I would say $1 billion is seemingly likely, because if Doctor Strange 2 is falling behind No Way Home at about the 50% range, or about 50% behind, it would make sense that its total results will probably end up in a similar vein. But that's only if it's able to have consistent holds from week to week. That week 2 drop-off, as I always say, for every film is always the biggest factor. But I'm so tired of them only focusing on pre-sales because, again, most people buy tickets on the day. And so the question is, will people show up on the day to go see this film? Or will they say, I'll wait. It'll come out on Disney Plus within the next 30 to 45 days, most likely. So I can wait for that. That's a question now. That is now something that is in the minds of many people. Anyway, those are the numbers. What do you think? Do you think Doctor Strange is going to have a $300 million opening weekend? I think that it is definitely possible. Again, based on just what I have seen as far as my local theater goes. So not just the pre-sales for my local theater, but the fact that it is my local theater and I know the market around me. So it's very impressive for the number of seats being sold in this specific area to be what it is. It makes a lot of sense for this film to be able to reach that success. So do you think the film is going to have a massive opening weekend? And do you think this film is going to be able to have a strong hold as well? I've heard some mixed things about the film. I've heard that some people say the film is fantastic. I've heard some people say that the film is a bit of a dud, is not as exciting as it could have been, that it misses a lot of opportunities. Who knows? I'll try and get back to y'all as soon as I can with any information that I could find out about the film itself. Anyway, and that's all I'll say about it. Please make sure you let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, slap that fire button on Odyssey. Y'all all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. Before going any further, I wanted to give a very, very huge special shout out to one of my Valkyries, one of my longtime supporters, Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Thank you. Thank you so much for being a supporter and for being a mod on this channel. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my members who are at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above on Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals. So first on Patreon, Brandon, let's go Brandon, Christopher Bowman, Garrett Searles, Hymir Irie Hymason, Jacob from Holland, Jacob Juice, who you can check out on his Letterboxd. Jacob Juice is how you can find it. Jeffrey Toon, Joey Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General, Story, Mad Mike Jackson, special shout out for him in a second, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Orange Hat Reviews, you can check out his channel, Orange Hat Reviews, Rosetta Allen, you can check out her channel as well, Stan Andrian, and Miss Martin Muses, who also has a YouTube channel, and a special shout out, as I mentioned, to Jacob Juice from Holland, again, letterboxd.com/Jacob Juice for more information about him, and a special shout out to my members over on Subscribestar, Matt 317, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank y'all very much for supporting on Subscribestar. And to two of the members who are supporting me over on Locals, who asked for special shout-outs. First off, Minnesota hockey fan. Let's go. Let's get a hockey player. And UAB Mad Dog Mike Jackson for the win. Thank you very much for supporting me, and also Robert Barnes on Locals as well. Anyway, if you want a special shout out, and Brett D90 for that matter, if you want a special shout out at the end of every single video, please check out that top link at the very top of the video description. It'll give you more information about the different tiers and what you get every single month. Thank you guys for your love, for your patience, for this month's shout out video as well. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.